Our objectives for tonight. Welcome and public comment. Ernie's going to provide updates on what's happening with BWS. Kathleen is going to present on the 2025 customer satisfaction survey results. I'm going to walk you through the roadmap that we're going down for this water master plan update. We'll accept notes from our last meeting. Carl is going to do a presentation on the CIP process and prioritization, and then we're going to do a group exercise as part of that, which is why these poster things are hanging on the wall, and it's why you've got Post-it notes, and it's why you've got some sticky dots. And so we'll do a exercise there, and then kind of spend some time talking about that, and then we'll talk about the upcoming meeting dates. Opportunity for public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on.
Just for Board of Water Supply updates, next slide, please. So what we have here, we had a press conference to announce our rebates for the Water Sensible program. In a partnership with the Department of Environmental Services, Dr. Roger Babcock and his team, they've agreed to actually help fund our Water Sensible rebate program. And that's allowed us to actually, in many areas, double our rebates. For example, toilet, energy, a water efficient toilet, 1.28 gallons or less. The rebate last year was $100 per toilet, up to $100. Now it's been increased up to $200. Also, washing machines, Energy Star or WaterSense washing machines, that's gone up to from $75 to $150. So please take advantage. This is for our residential customers. There's also a smart water monitor. From $200 it went to $400. This is a device that you can have a plumber install on your plumbing coming into your home to monitor for water use, how much you're using during the day, but also check for leaks. And in some cases, this device you may be able to remotely shut off your water if it detects a leak. And maybe on your smartphone you get an alert and you can decide to shut off your water. The idea is to conserve water and actually avoid these enormous bills because BWS only reads a meter once a month, and I'm not sure if you look at your water use on a daily basis, but this system will pay up to $400 for a device that you might install. And then it's not only the residential customers, it's also our commercial rebates. So for the businesses in our community, our business customers, those opportunities are really increased for our cooling towers. That's related to air conditioning systems that you might see in a large commercial building like a hotel, Matt. Probably what they call a chilled water system. It's the most energy efficient, but it does rely on water to be made up to help the cooling tower operate. And that cooling tower is used to take the heat from the building and release it to the environment, and then send colder water back into the building to continue to cool the building. In the near future, for the residential customer, also looking at dishwashers to see if we can add dishwashers. So I do cherish any ideas that any of you might have about how we can expand our Water Sensible program. Because my commitment is actually to expand this program to really take it beyond what it is right now. Since the program began in 2018, I think the cumulative water savings over those years to the present, till the end of last year, it's about 1.2 billion gallons of water has been saved. Thousands of rebates have been given out to our customers. I think our washing machine rebates were some of the most popular, over 13,000 of those. Next comes our toilets. Those rebates have really, I think there are over 5,000 rebates been given out. But it is my hope with this new increased rebate that we're going to see a lot more people take advantage of this opportunity to save water, to lower your bills, and help save our precious resource for our future. we have this flyer that's available on the table, so please take one with you. And you can go online to boardofwatersupply.com, and it's right there. Just click on the button that talks about the Water Sensible, and you'll have opportunities to look at ways to save water.
I just had a comment on the rebates. I was so excited when I saw that. I, do a lot of work around the Western U.S. I can't think of anywhere that I've seen the water and the wastewater utility partner on water conservation rebates. And I just want to really applaud you and Roger for the how progressive that is and how impactful that is. Those are big rebate numbers from what I see in my work elsewhere. So really exciting, Ernie.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, this is a great opportunity, and with ENV increasing the sewer rates, more of the sewer charges are based on water usage now. That puts more control in the hands of our customers, in your hands. So if you have an old water inefficient toilet, or you need to replace your 30-year-old washing machine, and look for something with a Energy Star or WaterSense, and we'll give you up to $150 back on the washing machine, up to $200 on the toilet. And if you go down to some of these big hardware stores, I went down there the other weekend. I could see that you could actually get a pretty decent toilet for about $200, or a little less than $200. Of course, you can save it even more by doing it yourself if you were one of those DIYers. But if you have to hire a plumber, at least the toilet itself could be nearly free. Any questions?
I was interested in your commercial smart water monitor. It sounded like it might have some kind of a technical application, and I was wondering if the Board of Water Supply has somebody that's knowledgeable in that area that could come out to a company and give them some advice, some specific advice in that regard. I'm affiliated with a company that uses way too much water. That's my point. We haven't been smart enough to figure it out.
Yeah, we do have our contractor working on helping to administer this rebate program for Honeywell. They do have technical staff that can help answer questions and come out to the business. We also have in this room some people that are involved directly on water conservation outreach. Stephen Nordstrom. Stephen, would you like to step up and talk about that? Your favorite thing, the smart water monitor.
As Ernie said, it's very easy. You connect it inside your property. If you have Wi-Fi, it will alert you of leaks, as Ernie mentioned. And it's really cool because it has like a little shut-off valve. So you could be traveling, you could be on the mainland, you could be doing something, and it will shut off your water if you have a leak. And that will save lots and lots of money, as well as saving our precious Vi. So if you are interested, if you have people that are curious about having a little more information, answering questions about it, as Ernie mentioned, Honeywell, our contractor, can come out and we'll do a whole presentation and answer any of your questions. So yeah, just Kathleen Wright, email you. Email Kathleen, she'll work with me and we'll set something up for you.
Water conservation is the cheapest way to develop a new source in our system. To drill a new well, that is millions of dollars, and it also takes years. I estimate now it's going to take from the time you pick a spot on the ground where you want to drill a hole to get water from the aquifer, could be 10 years to go through that process. But with water conservation, we can reduce our usage, make water available for our families, our community, and conserve our precious resources for our future. Another question, Dean?
Like for a farm, say I wanted to use it on a farm to monitor leaks and stuff on
Oh, that's a good
irrigation.
idea.
Is that possible?
It might be. I'm not sure, the manufacturers might have different size of device, but the device that Stephen had, his favorite thing that he wants to bring out, he brings out to talks, looks like a 3/4 inch pipe, or he could work on a 3/4 inch pipe. That was more for a residential application, but or a 1/2 inch. So great idea. Irrigation systems are easily one of the larger wasters of water, especially some of that piping will be underground, and it may be made out of plastic, and it could leak or break, and then you won't know until you get your water bill, unless you see water flowing on the ground or a really green spot in the midst of a brown field. So that's another out-of-the-box thinking of other potential applications for this.
You know, I really love this rebate process, but has the Board of Water Supply thought about those emergency straws that are available at Walmart that you can buy? Because the reason why I state that, if a customer buys that before a hurricane or a tsunami, they can have an emergency water straw, but then it's great marketing for Board of Water Supply if they put all the information on top of emergency water straw. And those straws, what those are basically, for everyone that's not familiar with them, you could take whatever water, if you have water barrel, you could use those emergency straws to drink water, and it would give you clean water. And so these are disposable, but it's a great marketing tool to put all the information, the rebates, stamped on the side of those emergency straws, and people could have that as part of their bug out kit.
Yeah, it's a great idea because, you know, we're in the middle of the Pacific, but we also have been known to have a lot of hurricanes come our way. And being prepared is always the most very important because you never know when it could happen that we get hit by a hurricane. Great idea. We'll take a look at that and see, maybe reach out to the Department of Emergency Management to see if that's something. Right now we're doing emergency water bags, about 2.5 gallons, folds flat, and we're giving that out for free to customers. But maybe another idea is something like that emergency water straw that you just suck on it filters the water so it's safe to drink.
The only caution I would do with the water straws is it doesn't take out everything in our waters. Because I looked into that. Leptospirosis is not filtered by that. So depending upon where you're getting the water from, it could be used, but in other cases, it's not going to filter everything out. That would be the one thing that I would caution, because I looked at that for even my own self and a few of our friends, and I specifically had to ask the company whether or not it would take out, 1 micron.
Yeah.
And it's you need a better filter than what they have in that. So that would be the one caution I would say about this water straw. You know, drink any water anywhere, whatever. Ask to make sure that it can handle all of the viruses and stuff that we have potentially in our water.
My turn?
Right, your turn.
Well, you know, I'm a water warrior, and I keep on trying to think of ways that I can save water. Instead of a shower, I use a bucket. And, you know, you waste a lot of water while you're brushing your teeth and the water is running, right?
Yeah.
So instead, put a bucket under the faucet, and then you can use the water. And so if you have a campaign for how many buckets you need to wash yourself or brush your teeth or wash your face or something, it'll be fun. And also, since the last announcement about still needing to save water, I was trying to think of what else I could do. And you know what? I stopped using the big bath towel. You can use a smaller bath towel. And that saves room in your laundry, and also it does the job, and it saves water. Get a smaller bath towel. In fact, the Japanese bath towel is the best because you can squeeze it all and you can wipe yourself without using a big bath towel.
I've never thought about that, Helen. That's really out of the box thinking.
And in some men's rooms, they have urinals where when you urinate, your urine goes through an oil layer and you don't flush at all. And okay, so I think that's a pretty good idea, but if it is a good idea, why wouldn't we try and have the building department make that a mandatory inclusion in building plans that get submitted? You know, it takes time for that stuff to incorporate sometimes, but I don't see the faults in doing that at all. It seems like I've told a lot of people that's a really great idea. Why don't you do it? And they kind of look kind of, kind of shrug their shoulders. But if it becomes a building reg, they're going to have to deal with it. And I don't know what the savings is, but I'll bet it's pretty significant. The other one that's pretty significant, and it's probably not popular, is that old saying, if it's yellow, let it mellow. In other words, don't flush it every time. But that makes a difference. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And my daughter went to a school located off Poly Highway, and they have, in their middle school, they have waterless urinals. And this is in a school setting with middle schoolers using the restroom. And they were able to make it work.
So as you all know, we have an annual satisfaction survey that we do every 2 years, and so these are the results from our most recent one. And won't go through all of this, but basically it's to track measures of satisfaction, other key metrics related to perceptions of BWS and fulfillment of its mission. We did a total of about 710 interviews, so that number's been going up over the years, and we have a pretty high confidence. It's plus or minus under 3.7%. So overall satisfaction with Board of Water Supply went up, yay, to 54%. That's strong satisfaction. You can see that right there. Bill payers also 54%. Non-bill payers 54%. But you can also see there's and you'll see this number go up, the don't knows. I'll touch on that in just a little bit. But you can see there's also a significant number of don't knows. And that's to be expected with the bill payers, non-bill payers, because they don't really interact with us. Our mission to provide dependable water, unfortunately, it's been going down the last few years. There are probably a lot of reasons for that. Probably just overall dissatisfaction with government in general, I'm guessing. But it's something that we can definitely probe the next time around when we do this. Providing safe water stayed steady at 60%, and then keeping the water rates affordable stayed steady at 32%. And that's good because 2023 is when we started our last 5-year rate, and so 2025 is kind of right in the middle of that rate schedule. So at least people, why maybe they weren't happy about it, they kind of weren't grumbling either, which is good. But one thing to notice, you see how big the don't knows have gotten. We are going to explore a slightly different way of dealing with it in 2027 and maybe do some more in-depth questioning on people when it comes to these things. Because unfortunately, the don't knows really do skew it because you have to take them into account. So Becky had said that at least this time around, the mean might be a more meaningful, no pun intended, number or way to look at what we're looking at versus maybe the percentages this time because the don't knows are so high. One thing we're thinking about is pulling out the non-bill payers on some of these questions because they may not they wouldn't know what a water rate, they don't pay a water bill, so affordable water rate probably doesn't really mean anything to them. Overall satisfaction, customer service is another thing we look at. It went down just a tad bit. Under bill payers, it went down again. Something we need to explore next time around when we do this. And again, we're not 100% sure why that might be because if you look at some of the other numbers, they're happy in other areas. So some more probing needs to be done. So this is bill payers only. So in 2025, so here you have how happy you were. It was 53%. And then, as you can see, they're very happy with how we resolved and answered their question. But here it was 48% total. So, you know, if that includes the bills payers, maybe we should take them out. Because, again, they have no experience with us. And that could be, and again, you can see how high the don't knows are. And that could be bringing the numbers down. Not making excuses, but it's something you have to consider when you're doing these kinds of surveys. We did well in the problem solving. Basically, everyone thought we were professional. Fast response, that went up as well, so that was a good thing. Overall, on our employees, overall professionalism stayed pretty much the same. Courtesy stayed pretty much the same, as well as efficiency. Accessibility went down a little bit, and that could be due that we sometimes have, like, unfortunately, a lot of companies long wait times on the phone. So that could have affected that number. Following through went up, which was nice that we said we'd do something, we did it, so that's a good thing. And then accuracy went up, so whatever we're doing in terms of fixing a bill problem, that's gotten better. Quality of water, very important question. So most people were generally satisfied with the water pressure. The quality of water did stay the same from 2023. As you can see, it did go down from 2021, which is probably not surprising. And then the taste of the water went down a little bit. Now, one thing having to do with taste, and I know we've talked about this before, your pipes on your side of the property we have no control over. So if the water might have an odd taste, it could be the pipes in your home, not necessarily the water that we're delivering to the property. We'll come out and test at our side of the meter, but then we would also recommend that you might want to hire somebody to come in and test on your side of the meter as well. How satisfied are you with the job that the Board of Water Supply is doing, protecting, managing, and sustaining Oahu's water resources? It stayed steady at 50%, which is good. Delivery of water service, providing water to customers, that stayed steady at 77. Reliable service dropped a little bit, and then fast response to trouble calls went up a little. Water delivery system, how are we doing repairing, maintaining, and replacing? That actually went up a little bit from 2023. So it's kind of interesting that reliable service went down, but we're doing a better job of maintaining the system. So I don't know. You know, that's one of those questions you kind of like, we got to maybe look at the question and how we're asking it. Fairness of water rates, very important question for us. Went down in 2025, not surprising. We have inflation, recession, everything keeps going up. So it's not surprising that people are feeling the pressure. And then I think anything related to cost of service is going to get probably a lower rating than perhaps maybe a few years ago. And that's very understandable. And then among bill payers, as you can see, it did drop quite a bit. Perceptions about affordability of water service, it actually went up overall. And among bill payers, it stayed steady. So again, you know, is this reflective of non-bill payers as well? If it is, maybe we need to take them out of that question and not worry about what they have to think about it and just look at the bill payers. But again, the bill payers, it dropped significantly, but then it stayed steady. So again, maybe we need to look at the questions we're asking and how we're asking those questions to maybe tease out some more information. About the bill, and this again, we only ask the bill payers only about how accurate the billing is. And the good news is, generally stayed relatively steady. It dropped just a little bit. Again, with the rates going up, people get wondering, well, you know, are you doing something wrong? Why is my bill going up? And then, you know, we try to take the time to explain to them, and hopefully we haven't done anything. But sometimes, you know, estimated billing and things like that can cause issues. How would you rate the Board of Water Supply in terms of their efforts to inform residents about how to conserve water and keep their bills lower? So a question very dear and near to my heart, of course, which is good. It went up a couple points, so happy to that. We did a lot last year. We've been doing a lot for the last couple of years, so we're very grateful that at least people are hearing it. So in the past year or two, have you made any changes? So this was really important. We want to see what they're doing to save water, because we believe that we can do more. And so thank you everyone for your suggestions, because we really do believe we can do more. And here are some of the things changes that they've made over time. Now, one of the things we think is there might be some message fatigue, because we have been out there a lot with it, and that happens. And other things have been going on as well, and people have probably in some ways bigger concerns about worrying whether or not they're saving water. So we're going to be doing some new things this year, mixing it up a little bit, trying some other ways to get the message out. We have been going out and doing a lot more events, going out and speaking to different groups. I speak to Jiki's adult education group about a month or so ago, and just talking about conservation. We believe that especially if we can get out on the street and talk to people at events, that really makes a difference. Sometimes even more so than running an ad or a TV commercial. It's that one-on-one conversation that you have at events and shows and things that we do. We've also been concentrating more on things like HOAs and AOAOs, multifamily unit type of places versus single family, because we haven't made a good penetration. So we started going to the building management shows and doing articles in the magazines and things like that. So we're going to continue that and actually increase that effort. We really need to impress on people that saving water not only saves you money, but it saves the resource. And as Ernie said, it's the single best way to save is to protect a resource, is to conserve.
If I've been taking shorter showers for several years and I get asked today, did I change my behavior? I'm probably going to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a declining.
Yeah, exactly. There's that message fatigue, and
Yeah.
well, I've already done everything. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely correct, Dave. Thank you for that.
It's that those behaviors become saturated, right?
Exactly. Who is responsible for water conservation? Well, everyone looks at the Board of Water Supply and says it's our job. Well, we appreciate that and we take that job seriously, but I'm sorry, it's everyone's job. And I don't mind telling people that. I was at Mililani Neighborhood Board and told everyone to let their grass go brown, because one good rain and our grass gets green again. And again, that's important. We love our green lawns, but we need our water more. Suggestions for conserving water. One of the ones I'm happy about is is just in general, just the message is getting out there. There is good recall. These are all things that we talk about in our advertising, so that's good recall, so that at least people, it's sticking and they remember it, so that's important. And then different things that we've done, and this is really good. The water sensible one has gone up, and that's had very low visibility because it's something we just mostly put up on our website. And so we've been actually doing a lot more, and a lot of that credit goes to Stephen and his hard work working with Honeywell and Barry's team, Lorna, and all of those guys together, really pushing that program and getting it out into the public. And then other activities that you might have heard of, water conservation still does pretty well. And as you can see, Red Hill went down, no surprise there. There was that big bump in 2023, which it was to be expected because of the spill. But since then, the information has gone down. And just, in general, watershed protection, recycling, other educational programs. And this year, development and exploration of new water resources. We've been talking about that more in the news, so that's nice to see that people have heard of it. And how do they want to hear from us? People like email. And again, I think that has to do with the fact that social media has gotten a bad rap in the last couple years. And people are trusting their email a little bit more. And a lot of utilities communicate with their customers via email. For those of us who are old, we still like getting our information from the TV and mail. Not me, but some people do. But generally, email has come to the top, even in the younger 18 to 34. And as you can see, social media, 2 years ago, that was not the case. Email was near the bottom. But even younger people are a little more skeptical about social media these days. And just some of the different channels that people get it from, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And then message recall, as you can see, Red Hill was very high in 2023. Happy to see that water conservation really jumped up there for 2025, again, through our work that we've been doing. Main breaks is really dropped and has stayed pretty low, so that's a good thing. Contaminants in water has jumped up a little bit, not a lot, but not surprising. And then the don't knows. That's always very high. And then sources, who do you trust? They trust us the most, which is really great. We'd like to be considered the experts on water on this island, and it's nice to see that they trust us more than anybody else. And we took out elected officials and businesses because generally they fall at the bottom of the list, so no need to embarrass anybody. Scientists are next, and then the rest all fall down. And then where do you want to get accurate information? A lot of people like getting it from traditional media and news outlets, more so than social media. So overall, satisfaction levels have remained relatively unchanged, in dependable water and safe water with some slippage. Becky says not statistically significant. Also noted in satisfaction ratings for the quality of the water, and that again, BWS holds the greatest responsibility for the water and for conservation, that people trust us more, and that why strongly satisfied with the board's ability to keep water rates affordable, fairness, accuracy, and perceptions about the affordability of water, all held relatively steady. And then again, resident perceptions again remained relatively steady in our efforts to protect, manage, and sustain the water resources. And then had a number of mentions of water conservation messages, et cetera. So that is our presentation on our customer satisfaction survey for 2025. Yes, Mahealani.
Earlier said something about, and I may have misheard you, you may not include the non-bill payers in your analysis. And I'm thinking, it's not true that they're not connected with bill payments, because if they live in a condo, they're still paying for that condo bill. They taste the quality of the water. They're affected by water main breaks. So those kinds of things affect everybody whether they pay the bill or not. So I would recommend you might consider keeping them at least where you need them.
Well, I think you're right. You're right. I don't think we'll ignore them, but I think we may need to look at how we analyze the data once we get it. Because as you could see in the don't knows, there were some really large numbers, like over 20% in some areas. And we figure that has to be the non-bill payers. But you're right. Not including them is a bad idea, but how we analyze the data and how we parse it is maybe a better way to put it. Thank you.
The analysis regarding, the response you got regarding the taste of water, I think the taste of water has changed. The water delivered by Board of Water Supply has changed over the last 20 years because the Board of Water Supply has increased the amount of chlorine. In part because they're not cleaning the tanks as often as they used to back in the 80s and 90s. So they're adding more chlorine because there's more bacteria being found. So if they would clean the tanks regularly like they used to every 5 or 10 years, I think that the need for the level of chlorine additive might change and the water might taste better without so much chemicals in it.
We don't get a lot of calls about the taste of the chlorine and the quality of the taste. That's a great question. I'd like to go back and take a look and see if it's been a steady downhill trend. We took off about 3 years of data because it was getting really crowded. We do still clean the tanks every 5 to 10 years, Ernie?
Yeah, it depends on which ones.
Yeah.
But some of the requirements for the increased chlorine actually are regulatory from the EPA, requiring us to actually maintain a residual in the system.
There was a time in the past when the ratepayers did not want a lot more chlorine added, and so they actually was a petition drive that was sent to the federal government to give the Board of Water Supply the flexibility to analyze the quality of the water and only add chlorine to the level needed rather than the standard nationwide. So that's part of the issue is nationwide water quality differs, and the water quality here supposedly was better than many other states. So that was an issue back when. I don't know if it still is, but the fairness of water rates, it is affected by the sewer rates, the sewer charges that the Board of Water Supply takes the hit for that.
Yeah, we know.
But that's something to, I don't know whether you want to integrate into your survey in the future, but that's an issue. It's been a long time problem for Board of Water Supply.
As you know, Mahealani, no matter how many times you explain it to somebody, they still, well, I get the bill from you. So we just accept it, we're okay with it, and we understand it. And now the new sewer rates had not gone into effect at this time when we did this survey. So you're right, it will be interesting to see what happens 2 years down the road when those hit, or they've been hitting for a couple of years. So we'll see. Yeah, Allison.
Non-scientific correlation maybe to the water quality and the taste. Sure. I don't know if everyone's aware, but the Mapunapuna, the Oldham Coca-Cola manufacturing plant is closing this month. And when that announcement went out, there was concern that because they're going to bring in from the mainland, that it was going to taste different. So on Coke's side, that's global standards for water. We all have water treatment systems so that we meet certain specifications. So that our answer was no, it's gonna taste the same. That's the goal, is Coca-Cola tastes the same wherever you are. But that, I'm saying, just saying that there is a perception, I think, that Hawaii's water tastes better, and it's what's contributing to Coca-Cola. So, or I think there are people that think it tastes better here. And then my second point was the awareness part for the conservation is so key. Like, for instance, at our little plant, that is not shutting down, the one in Campbell. We've gone years and years and building our environmental programs, and every month I'm giving people metrics on like how we're doing, and so everyone's like built into their mind now, and so they all come with ideas like, oh, there's a leak here, or what if we do this, or we had a leak in our toilet. So they're reporting things as they think of them or as they see them. So I think it's so key, like just building that awareness. So going out into the community is really important, and I think it's effective. And if you give people like those metrics, like this is how much we're saving, I think that helps too.
We share the information that Ernie shared earlier with the rebates, and it does people, you're right, but that's that face-to-face communication, I think, is the most effective. It really makes a difference.
Based on your communication, is there some kind of app that we could put on our phone, so if there is contamination up at Mauna Loa and you found E. coli, that my phone will get an alert about that, so that way I can let my neighbors know or my kupuna know that there's contamination and we should bring water to them from another area?
So two things. Yes, number one, we do H&L alerts from the city, who are probably the largest or second largest user behind HPD. And yes, we would put information out via that. So that's one app you could download. The second thing is we are hopefully, God willing, keep our fingers crossed, going to be launching our first mobile app this year. I'm not going to give you a timeline, but this year. And that is exactly another way we would be able to send alerts to people in specific areas regarding issues.
Would this group be able to be part of that beta group to receive that first?
That's a great.
And we can give you feedback on
Yep,
what we see?
Yep, we will definitely look into that. I think we're starting internally with our own staff first.
Okay.
And then maybe we can look at doing a second beta group secondly too. So
That'd be
yeah,
great.
thank you, Jickie.
And then we can give you feedback on our perception. Because one of the things I do full-time is I work for the federal government as a 508 accessibility senior technology advisor. And to receive information like that is timely, especially if they're deaf or if they're blind. But if they rely on their phone for receiving those messages, it'd be a great asset for those accessibility issues.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely happy to do that.
That's a fantastic survey, and I think you said 710 people took it. So those were all nose to nose, or was it online? I'm just kind of curious how
Our
that
phone,
went down.
online and in phone.
Okay, so, but my other question is, as it relates to the billing, I remember there was a little bit of a kerfluffle when the water bill and the sewer bill got combined, and now that there's a sewer assessment, which is, I assume, a third number for some people, or maybe they combine it with the other one. That is going to get combined with the regular sewer?
Our sewer and water bill have been combined since, I think, the 60s.
Yeah, it's been around, I don't know if it's the 60s, at least the 70s. The problem that we had back in 2013 is when we went for a bill every 2 months to a bill every month, what they call monthly billing, and at the same time we implemented a new billing system. The prior billing system was built in-house by our computer staff, and they did a great job, but it was time to actually get a new system to replace the old billing system. So doing all of those things together, I'll tell you, was the perfect storm for a disaster. And I just thank all your patience and the patience of our community, because it created a lot of estimated bills. Just a heads up, we are in discussions with ENV about separating the water and the sewer bills into separate bills. Instead of everything coming out on the Board of Water Supply bill, maybe ENV do their own billing.
And that was actually initiated by them.
Well, you were using the word satisfaction here, and I'm more willing to bet that there'll be a lot of howls going on, and the more you massage that billing and think about it from a psychological standpoint or a layout, artistic or whatever, it might help assuage some of that. That's all.
Well,
Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
And thanks, Bob. But the other thing too is we don't have any control over what ENV does. We give them the numbers and we send out the bill. So, we have thought about redoing the bill, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is still the bottom line.
I heard a couple things that I wanted to make sure we clarify. Chicky, I thought I heard you say like if there was a water quality problem in a neighborhood that you could bring in water. And Ernie, I want to maybe have you speak to that for a second, because the water quality within BWS's system doesn't go through those kinds of fluctuations where all of a sudden you might have a water quality problem in a neighborhood where people would have to, generally speaking. So it's not like the quality coming out of taps fluctuates like that. So
Usually it doesn't fluctuate very widely, but
Yeah.
we have something called main breaks. You're all heard about those main breaks. They happen almost once a day, and sometimes a main break creates water quality problems in a very localized area. So if necessary, we'll bring out water buffaloes or water tankers to the area while we deal with the water quality problem. H&L alert is really important. Please sign up for that application, because that's not only Board of Water Supply, but police, fire, natural emergencies like tsunami alerts too, hurricanes. H&L alert is really a way that our city communicates with our community about what's happening that they should be aware of.
Bob, I heard you say a sewer assessment and a third fee going on BWS's bill. The sewer rates are going up. There's not a separate sewer assessment.
For people on the North Shore that have never had to pay into that at all, it's something new, and it'll be a separate.
I think you're talking about the potential for a stormwater fee. Yes?
That's what they're calling it. But my point is, we pay for the water. We're going to get a new bill for the new law that's in effect.
It's not in effect. There's not a
It's supposed to
stormwater
start
fee.
January 1, so.
No, that's an increase in the sewer rates. So let me try and bring some clarity. Kathleen, if I say anything, you're North Shore, so if you're not on the sewer system, you don't pay a sewer bill. Correct. And you won't. There's discussion within the city and county about the creation of a stormwater utility. That would be a new fee. It's not been determined how that would be billed, nor has that been approved. That is not going into effect as of this point in time. It's being discussed, but not approved. I wanted to talk about the Water Master Plan roadmap. You know, for the past few meetings, we've been talking about the update to the Water Master Plan and some of the things that we're going to be doing in that update. We haven't really laid out the roadmap for how we get from where we are today to how we get to an updated Water Master Plan, the type of input that we're looking for from all of you along the way, when we're looking for that input. And so that's what I wanted to spend some time going through. And also at the last meeting, we mentioned that we may be adding some virtual meetings. And so I wanted to show how all of that, we're anticipating all of that to fit together and how to get from where we are now to an updated Water Master Plan that can ultimately be reviewed, considered, and hopefully approved by BWS's board. So it starts, you know, in the watersheds with BWS's sources, 5 shafts, 13 tunnels, 194 groundwater wells and source pumps all around the island, 13 treatment facilities. These are removing mostly legacy agricultural contamination, 172 potable water reservoirs, From those reservoirs, it's boosted into the distribution system, 2,100 miles of pipe going out to 170,000 service connections, serving about 1 million people. So that's the overview of the system. So the Water Master Plan is really about all the elements of that system. And there's 3 main components to it that we're going to be going through. The first part is technical evaluations, and you've seen some of those already. We've been talking about climate change and impacts of climate change to facilities and things like that. And then there's the capital improvement plan or the infrastructure improvement plan, right? And that's really about the physical facilities that exist, what ones need to be repaired, replaced, and what new ones need to go in for additional capacity. That information then feeds into a long-range financial plan, and then we do 2 things with that. One is using the information in that long-range financial plan to update the water systems facilities charge or an impact fee. That's a one-time charge that somebody pays the first time they connect to the water system. Like when a new house is built, it's a brand new house, never been connected, one-time fee. None of you pay this. It was paid long ago. Unless you're doing a significant addition to your home and you need a bigger water meter, then you might pay it. And then the water rates, right? And that's not part of what we're doing in this current scope, but the technical evaluations, the infrastructure improvement plan, the long-range financial plan, and updating the water system facilities charge are all things that we're going to be doing together here over the next 18 months or so. So when it comes to the technical evaluations, that really the evaluations fall into three main areas. The first is the demand and capacity. So by demand, we mean the overall amount of water that customers use. And by capacity, we mean the ability to get that water from the source to where people are using it, right? So where we have denser neighborhoods, they're using more water. That may not be exactly where the source of that water is. That may not be where the well is. So the water's got to be pumped, transmitted to that area, right? And then there's the condition of the existing facilities. And for this, we're looking at actual physical condition inspections. And then we've also been talking with you about assessing those facilities with regard to climate vulnerability. And the third element is a source assessment. And here we're talking about an evaluation of the existing water resources, looking at are there requirements for new sources, either due to water quality or the need for additional water? And then what are the quality and treatment needs associated with those sources? So those are the 3 main technical areas we're looking at. I thought it might be helpful at this point, since Ernie was talking about conservation and an increase in conservation programs, Kathleen was talking about conservation messaging, to take a look at consumption across several Western US water utilities. And when we talk about water consumption, a common measure of that is the gallons per capita or per person that are consumed every day. So GPCD, right? And the way this is typically measured is you look at the total amount of water that the utility produces, and then you divide that by the total number, the population, and then by 365, and you get to a daily number, a GPCD number. But I really want to point out that these methodologies do vary from utility to utility, and this doesn't mean that it's apples and apples. There's some apples and oranges going on in here. For example, if you were to go online and look at the GPCD number for Las Vegas, you're going to find a number that's about 90 gallons per capita per day. And the reason is that the way they calculate their number is they calculate it based on outdoor water usage only, because all of their indoor water use all of that wastewater flow is returned back into Lake Mead, and so it's not what's called a consumptive use, and so they don't count it in their number. So we had to go to some other sources to actually find what their real GPCD number is. So again, some apples and oranges in here, but nonetheless a useful exercise. So Las Vegas is the one to the far left. Then there's Phoenix, Arizona at 151 gallons per person per day. Overall, California is reported at 146. Board of Water Supply, 142 gallons per person per day. Again, this is the combination of all the residential usage, all the commercial usage, all the hotels, total usage divided by the population. Metropolitan Water District, that's a large wholesale water agency in Southern California, 114 gallons per person per day. Valley Water, which is a water utility up in the Santa Clara Valley in the San Francisco Bay Area, 111. Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. This is the water provider to basically the entire city of Los Angeles. Many people don't know that LA has the lowest GPCD calculation or GPCD number of any major city in the country. And they've gotten there by doing many of the same things that the Board of Water Supply is doing with indoor conservation and also aggressive outdoor conservation. And finally, up in Northern California, BOSCA is a consortium of like 15 utilities in Northern California, and a lot more rainfall in Northern California than in Southern California, and they report a number of 95. So BWS is kind of in the middle, and you can see there's quite a bit of opportunity, right? And hence the continued investments in conservation programs that BWS is making. Now, the capital improvement plan or infrastructure improvement plan that I mentioned, this really helps us identify what the capital costs are going to need to be that feed into the long-range financial plan. And this figure is from the 2016 plan. And there's years coming along the bottom, and then millions of dollars is the y-axis. And these different colors are different types of infrastructure. So back in 2016, the plan was to invest very heavily in that brown color, which is replacing water mains, right, to get the number of main breaks down. And then these other things are, you can see the yellow is sources and the blue is facilities, but pipelines was really the big intended investment. So what we're going to be, there's three types of projects that go into this. There's expansion of the capacity of the system when new development comes online, needing to get water to that new development. There's renewal and replacement of existing infrastructure. And then there's research and development, which is really planning, studies, software. And so what we're going to be doing for all of these project categories is estimating the cost for all the projects. Then we'll be scoring them for their priority, and then we develop anticipated timelines of when they need to be implemented. And so as we move into the development of the capital improvement program for this Water Master Plan update, you'll see a similar chart that shows projects by type of infrastructure that's being addressed. We take all of that and we use it to develop a long-range financial plan, and that identifies the amount of money that the BWS needs. Okay, and so that is made up of the costs to build all those facilities, the capital costs, the amount of operational, the cost of running the operation day to day, year to year, debt service. So, BWS borrows money to pay for some of those capital costs as part of maintaining the affordability of the program, spreading the costs out over multiple years. So there's debt service on that borrowed money. And then having working capital, right? Like the cash you have available to pay your bills in the short term. And then financial policies, things like how much money should the BWS borrow over a period of time? should it, how leveraged should they become, right? If you borrow too much money, starts to affect your credit score. So there's careful balances there. You also want to make sure that you have enough. When you're borrowing money, the agencies require that you keep a certain amount of cash on hand in order to be able to pay off that debt, right? So all these come into play when we're developing the long-range financial plan. And as I said, we'll use that to provide input to updating the water system facilities charge. And then BWS will later on look at updating the water rates associated with this. Why does all that matter? Well, the water rates and charges are the major source of revenue for the Board of Water Supply, right? Everything comes from either the rates or those one-time impact fees, and then there's a minor amount of income from interest and connection fees and things like that. And then those rates that I mentioned, that's really addressing the issue of who pays and how much do they pay. Or if you think back to the survey that Kathleen was showing, it's about people's perception of the fairness of rates and how affordable they perceive them, right? So how are we going to get there? That's a busy roadmap. So let's start down in the lower left. Here we are in January. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the capital improvement program process and how we prioritize projects, and you're going to be providing some input on that. Next month, we're going to have a virtual meeting. That's the kind of the teal color. And we're going to look at the BWS. In the last Water Master Plan, we developed with you a scorecard to measure BWS's performance in implementing the Water Master Plan. We're going to review the latest update of that scorecard and then look for input from you about how to make adjustments to it to make sure it's as effective as possible, that it's measuring the right things, and things change over time, so it requires some adjustments. In March, another virtual meeting looking at the results of the condition assessment of existing facilities and climate resilience. In April, we'll be looking at demand projections. How much water are we anticipating the population is going to need out over the next 30 years? And then what are the supplies that are necessary to meet that? Okay. And then in July, that'll lead us into a presentation about major findings from the Water Master Plan, from those technical evaluations really, and what are we expecting the draft capital improvement program to look like. Then we'll go to a September meeting, and that's coordination with the Honolulu One Water Program. In October, we'll be kind of presenting overall the Water Master Plan, CIP, the Long Range Financial Plan, and the Water System Facilities Charge. So bringing it all together for you. And then in November, we've got a couple of months here for feedback and some iteration. So that'll really be in November, and then in our January meeting, where we'll be looking to you for recommendations that you would give to BWS's board regarding everything we've been going through. In January, right after your meeting, then BWS's board will get a report on all these updates, which then leads into a draft of the Water Master Plan in April, and then you looking at the opportunity for final recommendations in July, and then BWS board's formal consideration or adoption of that plan in July of 27. So that's the big roadmap. Really, question comes up, what kind of input are we looking for from you as we go along the way? So this is looking at that same roadmap, but just showing the specific meeting dates, whether it's virtual or in person, the topics, and then the type of input that we're looking for from you. Tonight, looking for input on any of those milestones, and then of course we'll get to our exercise on CIP priorities. In February, it's going to be about the scorecard and the metrics associated with that scorecard. In March, it's going to be on how much mitigation should BWS consider doing as it looks towards climate change vulnerability with regard to facilities. In April, it's about preferences for hardening and diversification of sources or of supplies. July is really important, input on the capital improvement program priorities and how much money to put towards that. That's really the big driver of BWS's water rates, is that capital improvement program. That's by far the biggest driver of changes in the rates. Then in September, feedback on the integration with the Honolulu One Water. In October, feedback on the overall plan and policy recommendations to BWS's board. Same thing in November. Again, opportunity for that in January. And then in April, we'll be looking for final comments with regard to the draft water master plan. And then in July, whatever recommendations you have to BWS's board with regard to adoption, not adoption, and that's where we're headed.
That out to us so that
We-
we can have a calendar and know what we're expected to do on a per month basis.
Absolutely. Yes, we will get this out to all of you. And then,
So my
Well-
question is, so last year, we talked about some of the filter established capability or technology that you would add to a pump or wherever you're distributing water. You had an advanced filter system to remove some of the different things that had been detected in the water. And one of the questions I asked at that time was the possibility of having that at all the wells, so that way when it's distributed, to be more proactive than instead of reactive if we saw instances. So my question is, in regards to that, is we also asked previously about that new green fee that the governor had established and the state had established, and if we can use some of those funds to get those wells with those high concentration filters, so that way we are more less reactive and more proactive, and get the funds from that green fee to pay for that through capital improvement.
so I'll tackle the first part of that and I'll ask Ernie to tackle the second part. But with regard to proactively adding treatment at every single well source, that's a phenomenally expensive endeavor, and water rates on the island would be completely unaffordable. What the BWS does is it closely monitors water quality at every single source, routinely looking for changes in water quality. And so there's years and years of history on the quality of the water in those sources. And when they start to see changes in that quality, then that's a red flag. You look and say, well, what's going on? And I will say that there was some, Ernie's talked about PFAS, right? One of the latest contaminants, and monitoring all the sources for PFAS contamination, and then being very proactive about where a source is kind of on the verge. It's not at a concentration that's over the maximum contaminant levels for PFAS, but it's maybe close. Being proactive and designing that system and being ready to move with that. And actually, there'll be a presentation on, I expect, on PFAS programs here as part of what we're going to be talking about in a coming meeting.
Steve, yeah, that's in the category what we call emerging contaminants. New contaminants that we haven't seen before, that now there are different federal EPA regulations that we have to meet. As more information becomes available on the health effects of these different chemicals, EPA, if it's of a national concern, they'll start to move toward creating regulations that we have to comply with. So I'll just give you as an example for PFAS. There are, what we're proposing in our CIP that hasn't been approved by the board yet is 3 water treatment systems to go in at 3 well locations, 3 pump station locations. And the total cost of that right now is estimated to be about over $50 million. And this is just a treat for some of those PFAS chemicals. What also happens as we add more systems, and we're committed to provide safe drinking water to our community. That's something we're not going to compromise on. But it's not only the upfront capital cost, but it's also the operational costs that will be there for a long, long time. So as we add these on, we will be increasing our cost of operations. So not only the CIP, Dave mentioned the capital improvement program is a big cost that we have to deal with. How do we fund it from basically from people paying their water portion of their bill? That comes to the BWS. But it's also paying for the operation of an island-wide water system. And this year, that budget, comparing the operating budget and our capital budget, they're about equal. So about 50% is operational costs, and about 50% pays for our capital program. It's in the $280 million plus range for each. So our total combined operating and CIP budget for fiscal year 2026 is over $500 million. And that's the kind of challenges that we're dealing with. It is something that we as a community have to deal with. We have to provide safe drinking water for our community. We have to balance that with the safe, dependable water service with affordability. Yet affordability is still front of mind for us, and we kind of struggle with that. We're also going to be looking at different ways to look at how to assist those customers that are of greatest need, that struggle to pay their water bill. So, Chicky, good points. The discussion, and we actually have one of our consultants here sitting in the back of the room, Tom Myers from Brown and Caldwell, working on the emerging contaminant challenge here. We did it a little differently because the PFAS regulations really are going to start to get enforced on 2029. That we need to actually be operating some of these treatment plants and approved by the health department before that date kicks around, because if we start to exceed the levels that they've set, and these aren't parts per trillion range, like 4 parts per trillion, then we won't be able to pump water into the system unless we have a treatment system in place. Right now, Mark Chun in the back of the room is managing a project. We're working with Tom and our water system operations staff. They've installed a temporary water treatment system at Kalamila Wells near IA High School. And that system is just waiting for the health department final approval to be able to turn it on and treat water. Until then, Kalamila Wells is shut down because we're right near 4 parts per trillion, and sometimes we actually go a little bit above 4 parts per trillion of that source, PFOS. So we need to stay nimble. We need to figure out how to finance these projects, how to get them in a timely way, how to handle the operation and the cost of that, also the workforce that we need to support expansion of our water treatment facilities. That's a lot of information, I think I'll just stop there. Chicky, we can talk afterwards. Thank you.
On the PFAS, I read an article last week that said the EPA is allowing more PFAS to be put out into the industrial world to pollute our planet. And it seems to me that all the Board of Water Supplies all across the country ought to take issue with that. Maybe you guys can hooey up and solve part of the problem at the front end instead of scrambling around on the back end. That's all.
Great comment.
Thanks for that, Bob.
A quick rundown on the CIP process, and then what we're going to do is dive into the prioritization. Now, we all did this 10 years ago now. Went through and put together these criteria, metrics, measures for the prioritization. So y'all have seen this chart with the circle on it. The CIP process is cyclical. So the inside there is each year, 1 year's worth of projects gets done, and then the 6-year CIP gets refilled with another year of projects. So that kind of inner circle keeps running around. Every 3 years or so, we look one step bigger, kind of refresh that whole 6-year, bring in some of the bigger projects. And where we're at now is in that outer blue circle. This is more like a 10-year cycle. As we go through and update the water master plan, we update those technical evaluations. bring in some new projects, think about other, the priorities of the board and the stakeholders on what needs to happen in the next 10 years, rebuild the 30-year CIP, again, kind of keeping that reservoir of projects there and ready to get completed. So the overall process on the left part of the screen, we do, as I mentioned, those technical evaluations. Those identify the projects that are required. Once we have that, we estimate cost and schedule. Both are important. How long it's going to take to do the project and when it needs to happen. We do a prioritization score, and that's what we're going to work on here a little bit, to help lay out when that project needs to happen in the timeline of the CIP. And then once we have those priorities, then we can schedule it, lay everything out over the 30 years, and we end up at the very bottom with at least a guess at where we're going in the next 30 years. Obviously, it changes a little bit every year, but we want to get a pretty good guess on where we're headed and the direction that we're walking. Prioritization. So if anybody remembers, I know this was probably the one thing you locked into your head from 10 years ago. American Water Works Association has, they have these manuals. This one is called M29. It's Water Utility Capital Financing. And what these are is manuals of best practice, how a utility should operate. And in this manual, it has a lot to talk about with prioritization of the CIP. So what we did back in 2016 is we took the AWWA M29 metrics, how they recommend measuring for prioritization. We also took the Board of Water Supply's existing scoring system, and we kind of put them together. We looked at where the metrics made the most sense. We looked at the organizational structure from BWS's existing process, and kind of brought them all together to come up with something that was better than both. And what we focus on here is risk-based prioritization. So what does that mean? Rather than thinking, random numbers or how people feel about things, we try to get down to real specific measurements on these things. So risk is defined, at least in this way of doing things, as the likelihood of failure of something. So what's the percentage chance in any given year that something is going to fail or an event is going to happen, times the consequence of that failure. Those two things together give you the total risk. So if something is really unlikely to happen and is inconsequential, it's going to be a very low risk. However, if it's really unlikely to happen but would be completely catastrophic, that can have a very high risk even though the likelihood is really low. So M29 really recommends getting towards a risk-based prioritization, and that's what we did.
Is there a numeric rubric applied to consequence of failure? Okay.
Yes. So we have it broken down into, and you'll see it on the sides, criteria, metric, and then measure. Is not up here, but it is on the sides. So the criteria is the general category, kind of the bucket for that type of risk. And those really were similar to how the Board of Water Supply had done their prioritization. So it really it's those buckets looking at, okay, this type of thing. The metrics are what came from M29. So that's the specific thing that we're trying to score. And then the measure is how we do that. So what you'll see here is on these printouts, there's a description of what the measure is. What we don't have on here, because it would be a lot, it comes down to numbers on how big is this pump station and how much demand would be unable to be served if it went down. What is the surge being caused, the pressure surge being caused by a failure here? Down to very specific numbers on what these things mean. So we don't have those up here, but they do. I can show it to you. We also took and laid out, considered all of these criteria and metrics as it pertains to BWS's mission, so safe, dependable, affordable. So we wanted to make sure we had some metrics that hit all of those things, and preferably some metrics that hit multiple ones. So that's what we looked at here. So where these prioritizations come into play, renewal and replacement a lot. It's really important. That's really what sets the order of the projects, how they happen. Research and development, it's a little bit of both. For instance, a good research and development example is the completion of the master plan. That's pretty much done on a 10-year cycle. So that's more schedule-based, but not doing it would have a big risk item. So even though it gets a risk score, we're doing it based on schedule just because that's really how that should be done. That could be things like software renewals and things like that too. So they're a little more schedule-based. Then the capacity expansion, those are really more about making sure that that capacity is ready for when it's needed. So again, those are more schedule-based. They'll still get a score, but that's not how we're prioritizing it. That's then a piece of information that we can use to make sure that we get it where it needs to be.
There's a piece of paper on each side of the room. So maybe this half of the room goes over there, this half goes over there. In front of you, you have Post-its and you have 5 sticky dots. So with the Post-its, take a look at the criteria in the first column. System reliability, system adequacy, regulatory compliance, those things. And if you think one of those needs to be changed, or if you think something needs to be added in terms of those big picture criteria, go ahead and put a Post-it note up there. And then as you look at the metrics, the way we're measuring the performance in those, take a look at it. So for example, system reliability, right? We look at outages. So that means the loss of water caused by failure or deficiency, right? So a neighborhood's not getting water, that's an outage. Or lack of redundancy, meaning if there's a deficiency and there's an inability to move water into an area and there's an immediate outage, like a pump fails. And then surge, that's a high pressure in the system, okay, that can cause things to not work right. So those are the ways we look at it. If something there doesn't make sense or you think something else is important, I guess what we're really looking for there is on the metrics, use your 5 dots to indicate which of those 24 things you think is most important. And that's going to allow us to put some weighting on these things. So take some time, gather around, talk amongst yourselves as you're up there. Any discussion that happened?
Okay, when it comes to watershed protection, that isn't your land, it isn't your I mean, how do you exercise any positive influence in that area?
Oh my gosh, you just put a knife through Barry's heart.
Yeah, so we have on our website a map of what we call priority watersheds, where we have major sources. Yeah. And we have sources in just about every watershed, especially south of Wahoo. And so even though the land above may be owned by another landowner, we have the mountain watershed partnerships where we all agree to do on-the-ground projects, invasive species control, fencing and stuff. And so we fund, with the help of you folks 10 years ago, supported a dedicated source of funding to the watershed partnerships, YNI and Ko'olau, DLNR, Forestry and Wildlife, and Wild Invasive Species Committee. We fund that, and then they do the on-the-ground work. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be border water land. It just needs to benefit our sources, and that's the nexus. So how we can route the funding to them.
I put down for the outside funding, the military, and the reason why I say that is because
I knew you did that.
You did, because I write uppercase. But we all know about Red Hill, but from Waihoa, from Wheeler Air Force Base down to Pearl Harbor, there is that pipeline. And so that pipeline that goes underground, and you'll see it along the rail, it'll say fuel line or something like that. But I believe that was integrated during World War II as well. And so my concerns are, and I talked about this before, is that that filtration system that would be high-end, that could be placed at all the wells, should be funded by the military, mainly because we don't know about that infrastructure. We only know about Red Hill. But if the rest of that infrastructure that was built from World War II all the way from Wheeler down to Pearl Harbor, that's affecting everyone along the line. And I don't know if there's been any process to investigate the integrity of that pipe system, especially if it was integrated during World War II.
Our upcoming meetings we went through, and we will get this out to you each in a separate email. Look for that from the Board of Water. And with that, any final questions, thoughts?